welcome to everyone to what I think is going to be a really fascinating day. I'm Martin Smith. My background, just for your interest's sake, is primarily military. And as we go through the day, you'll see this is a bit of a recurring theme. So not deep technical, but an understanding of conflict. I come out of that and I find myself now as the managing director of a cybersecurity company, Cyberprism, and indeed an NED of Nihon Cyber Defense. So that crossover between what some of us have done in government to do with conflict, which may not have been to do with cyber at all, and the sort of skill set and leadership we need in cybersecurity, I think is very germane, very apposite. And I think you're going to see an awful lot of that today. So we have 4 panel discussions for you today, and we're going to start off by looking at cybersecurity through 3 distinct lenses. So in the first panel discussion, we'll look at the legal aspects of cybersecurity and law enforcement, so how you interdict it from a law enforcement point of view, and indeed how you prosecute it. In the second panel discussion, we're going to look at the cultural aspects, we're going to look at leadership, and we're going to look at the role of the board. And then in the third discussion, we're going to take a more geopolitical focus. We're going to look at cybersecurity from a national security perspective. And then in the fourth session, we're going to wrap all this up. We're going to bring it all together. So we're going to say, look, having heard what we've heard today, how do you prepare? How do you respond? We want to run it in a relatively informal basis. This isn't a presentation. This is a conversation. We'll be encouraging questions. I will, however, have my watch on me, so timings will be important, and I'd ask you, please, to respect that. I'd also ask that if you ask a question, you say who you are and where you're from before you ask it. If timing's everything in life, then the timing of this get-together today seems to be particularly well thought out, I suppose. You only have to take a cursory look at the newspapers this morning to realize that the term energy war is now current. And of course, it probably should have been current 10 or 15 years ago. But if it's not too late, and if we still have a vote in this is what we're in. We're in it now. And one of the things that I think is very obvious is that we're going to need some very, very credible leadership to get us through this. Now, actually, when we talk about that level of credibility in leadership, it will always remind me of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II and the sort of lessons that she can teach us even long after her passing. So with that in mind, I'd be very grateful if you dwell a minute's silence just to remember her. Thank you. Well, let me crack on and introduce our keynote speaker. You all have bios in the brochures in front of you. Please do look at the detail of what these people have done. We have some truly fascinating people to speak to you today. So I won't reread bios, but I will say that one of the singular things about General Lamb's career is that he was my boss, twice in fact. But he survived that, and he's here with us today. And I really can't think of anyone who can better bring together an experience of conflict, but also geopolitics, intelligence, and that dire need that we have to operate internationally with close partners, something he's been instrumental in throughout a long career in the military. So, General Lamb, the floor is yours.
Who said all stable processes we can predict? All unstable processes we can control. Anyone? Oh, nice one. Oh, yes. 1930s. One of the great mathematicians, John von Neumann, was equally comfortable in applied as he was pure mathematics, considered brilliant by people like Einstein and the like. A truly just extraordinary individual. but also thought to be the father of game theory. And that's the theme of the first frame. So he put together the early thoughts of mutually assured destruction, MAD, which was then taken to a whole new level by John Nash, which you most probably can remember from the film Beautiful Minds, where Russell Crowe played him, schizophrenic, a bit like me. Yeah, not quite sure who you're talking to. But in many ways, he, in taking the mutually assured destruction doctrine to the second strike thinking, ensured that we didn't, in the Cold War, have a nuclear exchange. That the first use of weapons made no sense on the basis that a survived and capable second strike would wipe you out as well. But it's the third of the great game theorists that I think we should in fact pay attention to, and that's Thomas Schelling. All of them are dead, by the way. 2 Nobel Prize winners, in this case, of economic science. But Schelling, one of his students wrote the following to just frame the challenge that you all face. You're standing at the edge of a cliff, chained by the ankle to someone else. You will be released, and one of you will be given a large prize as soon as the other gives in. How do you persuade the other guy to give up when the only method at your disposal, threatening to push him off the cliff, would doom you both? The answer is, you start dancing closer to the edge. You don't have to convince him that you would do something totally irrational and plunge him and yourself off the cliff. You just have to convince him that you're prepared to take a higher risk than he is of accidentally falling off the cliff. And if you can do that, you win. Just think of the film Lethal Weapon, Mel Gibson? Yeah? When it starts off and he's got the gun, he puts it to his head, go do it! Yeah, and the guy goes, no, that shouldn't be right. You should be trying to sort of get out of here. Just do it! And then look at something like Vladimir Putin right now and what is happening in Ukraine and on energy, and understand that he, I sense, is dancing closer and closer to the edge of the cliff. And if we let him, fear will consume us and will fold. Frame number 1. Frame number 2 for today, and I quote from that general philosopher and writer way back, Sun Tzu. Yeah, he's not quite as bad as Clausewitz, who wrote 10 books which are almost unintelligible. But he said daft things like, water will flow to the low ground. No shit, Sherlock. Yeah, of course it does. But he also said this: if one party is at war with another, and the other party does not realize it is at war, the party who knows it is at war almost always has the advantage and usually wins. Now, you think that's a sort of what I call meaningful, useful, sort of vaguely interesting observation. And then think again. If one party is at war with another and the other party does not realize it, how's that possible? We all know what war looks like, or you think you know what war looks like. It looks like D-Day. It looks like what's happening in Ukraine. It looks like shock and awe in the first Gulf War, whichever Gulf War you fancy. That's what war looks like, and that, therefore, in fact, is discernible. It would be impossible in those circumstances for you or I, for a moment, to somehow think we weren't at war if you're on the receiving end of shock and awe. Or you're standing in a trench in Normandy and you look across the horizon and there is the Royal Navy, the United States, and everyone else that's come to, in fact, kick the seven bells of shit out of you. So how is it possible to have a thought that you could be at war and not realize it? Because the truth is, war isn't what it used to be. The visible spectrum of war is the one I've just described. Pretty obvious, quite clear. It's what you have people like, Martin, myself to go and do. Get in uniform, cut about swiftly, survive hopefully, back for tea and medals. Demonstrable, in your face, visceral, tangible. But that's just the top of the bloody iceberg. It's the 1/8 you can see. It's the damn non-visible. Below the spectrum, below the threshold that we all put war into a category of, that will absolutely kill your company, your future, and our way of life in a damn heartbeat. Russia established a department of disinformation in 1923. Maskarovka. Misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, subversion, sedition. These are the tools that are used. A war of words. And then alongside those, a war against will. Now you introduce such terms as sedition and sabotage. You start moving from a mere thought of, or something that brings doubt into your analysis or the way you look at problems, and begins now to introduce actual physical change. Do I know what happened to the 2 gas pipes on Nord Stream 2 in the Baltic? No, I don't. 3 months ago, I wrote a piece for one of the boards I sit on and said, understand this. This is not about a war, a tactical war which everybody is fixated by that is occurring in Ukraine. This is all about this winter and energy. Everything to do with energy. 3,000 troops stood up. Not about winning a war in Ukraine. It's about buying time. This winter, this moment, this time is where the challenge will be faced, because if Russia and Vladimir Putin finds himself in April of next year and having failed to divide Europe, to neuter and sort of dismiss NATO, to take away the determination people still have on Ukraine, and to retain the US, Europe, including ourselves, transatlantic link, he's played his strategic and only one strategic card. So he will use every tool, those below the threshold of war as we know it, as we go through the next 6 to 9 months, because his personal survival depends upon it. If he fails the following winter of 2024, we will have got, what is the measure of Europe and ourselves? Too little, too bloody late. It's a sad reflection on our leadership and responsibilities as a nation to recognize what is absolutely been steamrolling forward towards us 2008, 2011, 2013, 2014, 2006. Just keep ticking the lists off. Georgia, Ukraine, Crimea. Oh, Salisbury. And somehow think, oh, well, no, he's just doing his own thing there. And so as a result, the reality of one of those weapons that will be brought to account and to full use in the widest possible sense will be cyber. The Internet Research Agency in St. Petersburg, will be working overtime to ensure they understand where the space of main effort is. And that main effort, energy. So anything you do in the cyber and the energy space in the next coming months, if you do not take anything else away from today's conversations, is listen to what I just said. Or wait until, the beginning of next year, the spring, and turn around and say, bugger me, that old bloke was right. Thank you.